Dobro jutro svima. Good morning. I didn't understand the introduction, but thank you anyway. And thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Andrea, for the invitation, and thank you to the ambassador for the embassy's support for us being here today. The name of my presentation is Topographical Voyage. This is a recent photograph of Santiago de Chile. It is a morning shot, as you can tell from the sun coming from behind the Andes mountain. The photo was taken from the top of the most important hill in Santiago, the San Cristobal Hill. In the foreground, you can see the urban fabric of diverse construction types and densities being dissected by the river. Oh, something happened. The city being dissected by the river, the Mapocho River, which goes from the mountains to the Pacific Ocean. Immediately above the city, there's a thin morning haze, a low cloud that partially blurs the view of Santiago's extension. On the background, we see the massive mountain range of the Andes with the magnificent El Plomo Mount as its highest peak. This cross-section of Mount Chimborazo by Alexander von Humboldt is a graphical depiction of how different kinds of plants that grow at certain altitudes are similar to other species within analogous climates and elevations across the globe. This revolutionary observation at the time establishes a direct relation between certain life cycles and geography. For me, as an architect, this image manifests a strong discovery as it relates typology and topography. Just as the different specimens noted by Humboldt, I would like to present my work as bodies closely related with the conditions given by the pre-existing ground, the topos informing the type. These are sections of some buildings I created with my office since I began working as an architect in 2004. They are not organized chronologically, but according to the degree of inclination of the ground. In all of these buildings, it is crucial the way they touch the ground, how much they transform the existing topography or how much they leave it untouched, how much they engage or either contradict the oblique plane. In the center of the image, there, that's a section of house Camino Farillones, the first house I built in 2006. It is a very simple scheme. It is a half-sunken concrete podium that generates a horizontal plane of 30 meters long over the inclined terrain. Over this flat surface, a very lightweight steel roof is built to generate a shaded surface for its inhabitants. In retrospect, since this first project, my work has been revolving around the same set of ideas: how a building relates to the ground and transforms its surroundings, how gravity affects space and defines structural expression, and finally, how architecture establishes different degrees of fluidity between inside and outside. The work I will present you today is located in South America. It is a voyage stretching 4,500 kilometers of the Andes Mountains from the north of Peru until the south of Chile. We're starting just below the line of the equator in Peru, then jumping to the flatlands of Bolivia, and then going south to the rainy south of Chile, to Valdivia. The first project is it's for a hotel named Explora. Explora is a company hotel that redefined hospitality in Chile. They were pioneers in building their hotels in, until then, little-known remote spots and turning them into iconic world destinations, like the Explora Torres del Paine in the photo, built in 1994 by Chilean architects José Cruz and Germán del Sol. But behind these great locations and the beautiful architecture of Explora, there is also a novel philosophy, which reformulates traveling as an exploration, offering their visitors a direct experience with nature and the local culture. Today, Explora has 6 hotels in Peru, Chile, and Argentina, and has expanded its concerns towards conservation, protecting vast areas of land in different parts of South America. So, recently, this year, Explora asked us to design their new hotel in the Cordillera Blanca, an area far away of Peru's regular tourist path, only known to backpackers and experienced mountain climbers. The site, which is down here, right, is a terrain at 2,500 meters above sea level and just 15 kilometers in straight line from the summit of Peru's tallest mountain, which is Mount Huascarán, with 6,700 meters high. So from this point, when you look at the mountain, you're confronted with more than 4,000 meters of vertical difference. This height is more than what you see of Mount Everest from its base camp. So the view of the Huascarán from this point is really an astonishing monumental site. The design that we are proposing wants to heighten this vertical relation by means of having a greater exposure to the exterior, to the movements of the sun and the clouds. I imagine an interior that could be more like a tent of a climber that's heading towards the summit of Huascarán, rather than a regular protected interior of a hotel. So the building we're proposing is a compact linear volume, 100 meters long, placed perpendicular to the sloping terrain, in a similar way as the first house that I showed you in the section. It's a 3 stories horizontal construction that, like a pier or a dock, is anchored to the ground as a defined point of arrival and departure to the daily explorations of the visitors. In the first 2 levels below, there are arranged 20 bedrooms, all facing the direct view to this magnificent mountain. These levels, the 2 levels below, are built in concrete and masonry using very simple forms of construction available in the area. The second floor of rooms, and part of the supporting structure of the building is carried to the perimeter of the building by a series of columns. This vertical repetition enhances the idea of both the pier and that of the podium, while giving a taller proportion to this lower part of the building. Above this podium, in the 3rd level, you have the entrance of the hotel, dining room, kitchen, main living room with a bar, and at the end, a terrace. All this arranged in a linear sequence, right? And all these spaces of the level above are protected by a super light roof structure on top of it that allows light to come in and to see the sky. In terms of the arrangement of the program, the fact that the hotel is entered from above enables having the bedrooms below, right, and the public areas above, and not the other way around, as it usually happens in hotels. This flipping of the program allows for rethinking the roof of the building as a singular element. In this case, as a diaphanous membrane that creates a subtle separation between exterior and interior. This is an image of the entrance of the hotel, and on the back, this view to the Huascarán mountain. This is the image of the main living area with its bar, and you see this translucent roof with horizontal curtains that could help control the light inside the space. The weather in this area, even though it's very close to these glaciers and mountains, it's a subtropical weather. So temperatures never fall below 5 degrees or go up 28 degrees. So the weather is quite good. So we are still designing this, and we hope to make it work. It's a detail of the terrace at the end of the building towards, that's the Wandoi mountain, another mountain in front of this terrace. This is the image of one of the bedrooms of the hotel in this, in front of these columns that make this pier-like structure. And the model we presented to the clients a few weeks ago. And the next project is related with the first. While we were beginning the design of Cordillera Blanca, we are finishing the construction of what was our first commission from Explora, which is a group of shelters for the Travesía Explora Uyuni in Bolivia. The concept behind this travesía is a nomadic form of exploration with no fixed hotel or heavy infrastructure. During a week, the visitors are guided into remote areas in the mountains, stopping at night for sleeping on very basic shelters. In the photo, you can see a short stop of a group of travelers on their way across the Uyuni salt flat in Bolivia. Each group of no more than 6 persons travel with a driver, a guide, and a cook. The Travesía Uyuni lasts 7 days, and it starts in Chile, in the town of San Pedro de Atacama, then crossing the frontier to Bolivia. The frontier is this white line, crossing to Bolivia here, and then going north, parallel almost to the border, through an area full of volcanoes, lakes. It's a really isolated part of the desert. And then what we are designing are shelters in Ramaditas, in Chituca, and in Jirira, which is already in the Uyuni flat, salt flat, which is this huge white surface you see there. So I'm going to describe really quickly the three spots. The first spot is Ramaditas, which is down here. It's at 4,000 meters high at the foothills of Ascotan volcano here. And the terrain is a gentle slope that rolls down to Ramaditas Lagoon, which is that place there. From this seemingly inhabited place, you can see 4 volcanoes in the horizon, and the color of these mountains have a kind of reddish color, which is really beautiful and quite unique. The second spot is Chituca, which is right there, and it's very nice because at the end of the horizon you get to see the salt flat of Uyuni, but from a certain distance. So you're still not in Uyuni, but you can see it from the horizon. This location is totally different from the previous one, with a small spring of water that comes from below some rocks. It's an area that has been inhabited probably for centuries. Every season, quinoa has been planted in these lands, and animals have been gathered in corrales made with stone walls. Thanks to the presence of water, different types of cactus and shrubs grow naturally in the area. And the third spot is Jirira, which is already crossing the Uyuni salt flat. And Jirira is a small peninsula here, just below the Tunupa volcano. And it's an impressive location in front of this. This is the largest salt deposit on Earth. This is an image of Uyuni salt flat while we were crossing it on our way to Jirira. And this is a photo on top of this peninsula over the salt flat. And the light, the reflection of the light you get here is almost blinding. I would say that despite the beauty of this area, the high altitude, the dry atmosphere, the cold wind, and the permanent exposure to the sun makes it a very difficult place to be in. The body is not used to this kind of harshness of the territory, and it takes a while to get used to it. So the brief for the project from Explora's side was very restricted. The budget and the time for its design and construction were extremely limited. We realized that the only way of doing it was by designing a system that could easily adapt to these different sites, and that was completely prefabricated, reducing to the minimum the work on site. In a way, we thought that the building should be more like a Toyota Land Cruiser than a regular construction. So, the requirements that we listed as the basis for our design was first a totally prefabricated modular system that would arrive hopefully 100% finished to the site. Second, the shelter should be as lightweight as possible so they could be moved in a truck and handled by a simple crane. We couldn't afford the Sikorsky helicopter, by the way. Third, the modules should have different components so they could adapt bathroom, kitchens, bedrooms, services, and living areas without significant variation. Fourth, the structures should be mounted with a simple set of wrenches, allowing it that in the future it could be dismounted and easily moved somewhere else, leaving no trace in the ground. And fifth, the resulting volumes should disrupt the landscape as little as possible without altering the ground. They should be light in physical and also in visual terms. And of course, the modules should fit the size of a regular truck for an efficient transportation. As a way to adapt the modules to each site, we added extra components to the system. Below the modules, you see on top, we designed simple stilts and beams that would generate a distance from the irregular ground and creates a horizontal table where to place the modules on top, as you see in the second diagram. And in the third diagram, you see that we added on top of the modules a second larger roof to provide extra shade and protection. This is the plan of the pavilion for the common areas. It is a very simple floor plan built by the sum of 5 large modules of 3 by 6 meters, plus smaller modules on each side, plus an even smaller module of entrance. And you see that the modules came already. This one came with a small toilet, with a back kitchen. This other module came ready with the kitchen in it, so everything was quite specific. This is the plan of the pavilion for the bedrooms. It's the sum of 4 modules of 6 by 3, plus smaller bathroom units in between. In the section, you can see the interaction between the different parts. Module, stilts below, the roof, the entrance ramp, and the terrain. Even though it's a very simple arrangement, we try to articulate the way you go into the module. By means of this ramp, the eave over the ramp, the recessed door, all this generates a subtle protection around each entrance that we considered was important in this super exposed environment. And this is a render image we did for Ramaditas. You see that even though it's not a mimetic architecture in no way, the color of the building is trying to establish a link with the colors of the landscape. This is in Chituca. And for Hirira, due to the great contrast produced by the light reflected from the salt flat, we decided to use this dark gray color. And all these ideas were built not in Uyuni, where there's pretty much just small villages. We found an engineering contractor in Santa Cruz de la Sierra, 600 kilometers away from Uyuni, to build this in a small industry. As you can see in the photo, everything was totally prefabricated. You see, this is the interior of one of the bedrooms. It's already with all its windows and details. Everything was set, packed, and moved through the desert up to the mountains on trucks that had to go really slow. They were traveling for more than 2.5 days to get every little piece to the site. There you see in the photograph the table. It's all bolted, so it's really easy to arm on site. The foundations that you see there are also prefabricated, so in the future we can take everything away. This is the mounting, the assembly of the modules in Chituca, the second spot. The roof also came already pre-armed, so it was just grabbing it from the truck and putting it on top and bolting it to the structure. And this is how it's looking today. This is the site of Ramaditas with this reddish color I mentioned. These are 3 pavilions. The third pavilion is a service pavilion, so it's common areas in the center, the rooms to the left, and to the right, the service area. And the effort in this design was focused on trying to attain this lightness on the building. And beautiful things start to happen, like how the buildings frame the views towards the horizon. And we are right now doing some site work, doing small stone walls, so that there are some outside areas more well defined. This is how it's looking in Chituca. So, I mean, the idea is quite prefabricated, but the way we're placing them on site is quite site-specific. And already they're bringing the furniture, so the places are now looking much more dressed up. The interiors are all cladded in Bolivian wood. This is mani wood. The night shot. And the case of Hirira over the salt flat, it's still under construction, and next week I should be there. The third project is the Gut House, and I'm going fast so we can see everything. I like to think of this house as a distant relative of Casa Malaparte, or actually as an inverted Malaparte. It is a house located over a terrain with a 25-degree incline facing the Pacific Ocean in the coast of Zapallar, 2 hours away from Santiago de Chile. Its design, structure, internal organization, and the lifestyle within it are determined by the site topography and the decision of creating a continuous space over the pre-existing slope. So, the inclined concrete slab of the roof is parallel to the natural grade of the site. And above this roof, it's occupied as a large terrace of various levels. Part of it is this big stair, but you have also horizontal surfaces where you can hang out and see the horizon. This space on top of the house has unusual proportions for a domestic program. Below this oblique plane, a continuous diagonal interior space contains the different common areas of the house. The monotony of the free plan is redefined by the slope, creating an interior topography with 11 levels and 7 different stairs. The roof, which is this big rectangle you see on the left, is supported by 15 concrete columns, all with different sizes and shapes. The irregular geometry that characterized them was determined by structural needs. The heterogeneous shape of the pillars individualize each column as a singular element, avoiding the reading of a rigid structural grid ordering the plan. So the plan here, you see, each column generates a particular point in space, and the framing between these different geometries frame the landscape in different ways. Lighter volumes cladded in wood, these are the volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4, interfere with this topography and with this slab. And these volumes contain the bedrooms. And these volumes are located on top, under, to the side, below the slab, so generates kind of ambiguous relation between private and public areas of the house. So you see the house in front of the beach, right? With this public path beside to the house. The public path connects public road on top and the beach over the Pacific. The bigger volume that you see here protruding the slab is the main bedroom of the house. And this is the view when you go into the house. When you go in, you don't have the regular horizontal view overlooking the Pacific, but rather you have a diagonal view looking downwards towards the interior landscape of the house. The house creates this kind of topography in itself between different stairs, in this case the kitchen, right, with the sink. On top of this volume you have a little sitting area, and below it one of the bedrooms. So everything is quite interconnected due to these changing levels. And we tried somehow to diffuse the border between interior and exterior. For example, by having columns that are inside the house and columns that are outside the window, let's say, not outside the house. So there's like a kind of ambiguity in that. Or by having the plane of the window not always corresponding with the roof, so the window is somehow moving below the roof. Or by having the vegetation at some points going below the house. This is the view of the master bedroom. And of course, you are free to go to this roof. And I like this photo because you cannot tell what's interior, what's like there's no hierarchy between interior and exterior. The following project, we're traveling, going south. We are in Santiago now. So we're going back to that first image that I showed you. The first image that I showed you of the mountains was taken from there, the north of the city, and we're going to see a project here, just in the south of Santiago, in the area of Pirque, in the foothills of the Andes. As you can see in this aerial photograph, the site is a suburban area where there's still a lot of agricultural activity, most of it related to vine plantations for wine productions, as you see here. And the site where we are going to talk now is right there. And the little project, the glass house, is that spot there. The client who lives in this site has planted and taken care of this park of exotic species for the last 35 years. And he wanted to expand his collection of plants to tropical species. He's someone who also appreciates architecture, so he asked me to design a space that could serve as a house for the plants, but also as a pavilion he could visit while walking through the park. The history of greenhouses go hand in hand with the development of glass and steel technology. In this project, the challenge was to give the structure of the glass house a specific spatial and structural quality. If plants are beings that constantly defy gravity as super efficient structures always growing upwards, I thought that the container for these specimens should play with gravity. If this glass house was to be a container of different plants, I imagined that the shape of the building should be as rational and abstract as possible. In plan, a clear square that would contrast with the freedom of the vegetation inside. Symmetry became something important, both in plan and in section. The material used for the glass roof are glass blocks, a heavy material, a decision that could be considered as counterintuitive for a light, almost ephemeral structure. Two parallel vaults give a solid structure to the blocks. The concave space under the vaults allow an interior height sufficient to grow small trees. Around the plants, here and here, a 1 meter high plinth hides the ducts for the heating system that runs around the perimeter, necessary to heat the room when the temperature drops 14 degrees during the winter. This is a very quick image of how we built the vaults. We had to design a form done with steel that we could reuse while constructed this constructive sequence. And today, the glass house contains a small captive forest. Through various mechanical systems, it generates an artificial environment conditioned to recreate a fragment of tropical forest in the dry latitude of Santiago. Its inhabitants are a variety of ferns, palm trees, orchids, mosses, and some insects that have found their new habitat in this controlled atmosphere. The structural glass shell forms a translucent, continuous surface that avoids the projection of shadows. The glass block inner face is striated, it's not flat, and this prevents the direct passage of sun rays through the blocks, reducing the direct radiation on the leaves of the plants. The only interruption on the surface of these vaults are the structural expansions that allow the vaults to resist a possible seismic movement. These grooves, these are the expansions, right? And also the irrigation system is connected to these roofs through small hoses through which micro sprinklers moisten the environment from above when humidity drops. And at the end of each vault, you have these windows which will open automatically to have cross ventilation if the temperature goes higher, 24 degrees. These are photographs when it was recently finished, but today all this vegetation is almost up to the roof. The plants are very happy living inside. Some details, for example, as a way of not going against the symmetry of the square, the way of going in, we thought it was nice to use these rocks so we didn't disturb the symmetry of the perfect square. And there's some landscaping done by Juan Grimm around the pavilion. This is with the irrigation system on. The next project, and I know I might be a little fast, but I want to show you this. The house is located, again, on a sloping terrain, blah, 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 facing the Pacific, in a seaside village of Puertecillo, 3 hours south of Santiago. This is the client, a very nice guy, contemplating the model, bowing towards architecture. And, well, the project proposes two separate worlds. An open plan here to gather family, friends with unobstructed views towards the surroundings, and another very different area of private, smaller rooms to rest and sleep. The floor plan is quite conventional, I would say, and there was little space in this project for programmatical invention, so we invested all the energy in the section. So thinking about the duality between these common areas and the private areas and the possibilities of the section, we proposed the conjunction of two different or even opposed architectural archetypes: the super light tent versus the stable permanent cave. The cave-like house is a volume of reinforced concrete with thick walls and controlled openings. It's a heavy, static, monolithic construction attached to the ground, enclosing 4 rooms with a lot of beds. While the house as a tent is a light, dynamic steel structure from which stainless steel cables are hung to support a thin roof that hangs over the space. The shape of the roof is given by the catenary geometry produced by the suspended cables, forming a curved surface in which all the structural elements are visible. Photo of the construction, and I'm always surprised that all the structure of the roof are hanging from these really thin metal cords. We had to think really about how to build this, so we invented this kind of comb on which you put the beams and you bolt them together. It was really fun to do with the contractor. Each time I like more the process of designing stuff that requires a certain thought in terms of how it's made, how it's put together, how it has its own particular technology. In a sense, I try to avoid off-the-shelf solutions. And I'm not talking about super complex rocket science stuff, but just building a glass vault or a catenary roof or a translucent roof, as in the case of the first hotel, or a prefabricated module, as you saw in Valdivia. These little steps pushes you to develop small inventions. And this is with the house already finished, with the tent-like house and the cave-like house besides. And again, there's interest on trying to be very subtle between what's in, what's out, and how we play with the horizons and with the levels. The vertical enclosure of this area was quite difficult, right? If you're doing this super light thing, how do you enclose it? Well, we used glass panels and a few pieces of furniture that do not interrupt the simplicity of the space or the structural scheme. The open plan allows for different uses and configurations over time. The family can expand or compress. And this, the cave, the interior of one of the bedrooms, and there's no articulation between these two worlds. These opposing worlds are placed in contrast, side by side, with no formal disguise or overlap. These are two independent architectural creatures that function as a whole just because of their proximity. And the last project I will present you today is an ongoing project that we got through a public competition we won in December last year. It is the design of the new library and archive for the region of Los Rios in the city of Valdivia in the south of Chile, in a site beside the river Calle Calle. This is the river Calle Calle, and the water of the river Calle Calle is coming from the mountains of the volcanoes that you see in the horizon. So this is very near the coast, but still always in reference to these mountains. Our design accentuates Valdivia's relation with the water, whose life and history are indivisible from its rivers and wetlands. The relevance and regional scale of this cultural infrastructure will have the capacity to reactivate the relationship between the city and the river, eventually re-establishing the Calle Calle River as a waterway as it used to be in the past. You see that the river is a huge river with calm waters, and it's perfect for sailing and moving through it. And the city historically has always had this very close relation to the river, which has somehow been lost in the recent decades. So, analogous to this old collage by Hans Hollein, the project proposes freeing up the site as much as possible at ground level, minimizing the footprint of the building on its first floor, concentrating the program as a dense, robust, vertical public infrastructure. And to make it clear, the building is down here. This is obviously an exploded axonometric. And the project is conformed by 3 different but interdependent buildings. The tower at the center, the ark, as Noah's Ark, but with books on it, and the plinth, generating a conglomerate building as a whole. The 6-story tower building is located in the center of the plot. That's the tower, obviously. And in the first floor is the public access atrium to the regional library. And on the upper floors of the tower, you have the regional depository and the regional archives. The structure of the central tower is an exterior concrete grid which forms a neutral and stable expression, allowing different uses over time. And the ark building, this one, right, is a single-story aerial ring located around the central tower, 8 meters above the level of the plaza, and it contains the entire public program of the regional library. So the ark, the library, is a large unitary building suspended on this big diagonal reinforced concrete columns, giving the square below large covered areas, forming a promenade protected from the constant rains of this region, allowing its use throughout the year. The structural dependency between the building, the ark, and these diagonal columns that support the library is a relationship similar to that of large boats that, while being on land, are suspended on pillars to make them rest on dry ground, as it occurs in this ship graveyard just neighbor to the project site. So, of the 6,600 square meters of the plot, 5,500 are transformed into a large public square or plaza park. And this is the main access to the library, facing the river, which is here. So the project establishes this strong relation between the river and the city. With a landscaping of wet and dry areas, native species will be reintroduced. In this way, the Access Plaza will be a meeting place between nature, culture, and the city. And inside the ark, in the 3rd level above, its ring-shaped plan allows for a fluid circulation between the different areas of the library. It is a continuous ambulatory which, like a cloister, can be walked without interruptions around the void that separates it from the central tower. So its tower, ark, and plinth respond to different programs and needs, but the sum of these different parts in a single conglomerate aims to provide the best possible protection for the building and its cultural heritage content. In the history of the city of Valdivia, there has been important floods, as it happened in 1960 by the effect of an earthquake that caused a huge tsunami. So the fact that most of the building is above ground gives extra protection to the contents of the archives and the library. And these are a few images of how we are thinking of the interior of the library. And this is the final view from the city of Valdivia, the building, the covered plaza below the building, and its close relation with the river. So thank you very much.